Hello and welcome to another edition of Community Tapestry. I'm Napoleon Bell, the Executive Director with the City of Columbus Community Relations Commission. I'd like to welcome you. And to my left, we know as Toni Teague, the ultimate co-host of the program.
It's good to be back. Thank you. Happy New Year.
Oh, Happy New Year to you too. We got, a great year starting off 2013.
Man, it's going to be a good kind of year.
It is. I mean,
Keyword kind.
It is kind. It's going to be a kind year, but a great year also. And it's starting off today. What better day for me to be in the studio, but on my
birthday.
My birthday.
Happy birthday to you.
Yes.
Do we get to tell the world which?
It's the 27th. Yes, exactly. Right? Okay.
There you go.
Well, speaking of 27th birthday and being kind.
But that's a lie. Did we start off with a lie?
We don't.
It's
We
okay.
don't. It's a mere fib. But we want to be kind to each other. So,
Yes.
So I've got to ask, have you ever had one of those days when life seemed stressful? You needed some hope and someone did some small act of kindness that made your day or made whatever life might be challenging you with more bearable. Our topic today is human rights and acts of kindness. And our guests this evening we have Joel Diaz. He's the Chief Development Officer of the AIDS Resource Center of Ohio. We have Deb Supalak. She's an instructor of sociology and cultural diversity at the Columbus State Community College. And Elizabeth Holford, who's the new Executive Director of Equality of Ohio.
Hi.
I'd like to welcome you to the program.
That's right. And Napoleon, they each have these stories about how kindness has impacted their lives and the lives of others around them on a daily basis. So again, we'd like to welcome you, the viewing audience, to give us a call at 614-645-6557. And as you're thinking about these acts of kindness and how they've impacted your life, we'd love for you to be thinking about that as you're making your call. How have acts of kindness impacted your life? Whether you've done something personally or if someone's done something for you rather randomly, give us a call again at 614-645-6557, and let's take a minute to get to know our guests today.
Well, I'd like to start off with Joel because, we talked about, in the introduction where you're from, but tell the viewing audience, a little bit about what the AIDS Resource Center does.
Sure. AIDS Resource Center Ohio is a statewide HIV/AIDS service organization. Our mission is to lead the fight against HIV/AIDS through awareness, advocacy, and care. And so we provide service in 62 out of the 88 counties in Ohio. And so that includes medical services here in Central Ohio directly through our new medical center and pharmacy that's recently opened, and then as well as social and human services that we offer through our case management services programs. And then, of course, HIV testing and prevention efforts and advocacy and public policy efforts as well.
Wow. So you guys are rather busy.
We stay very busy.
And it's a good thing.
It is.
So to you, Deb Supalak of Columbus State Community College, how do you impact the community as an instructor of sociology and cultural diversity? How do you get the opportunity to have a broader impact on the community?
Well, I think through understanding the influences that society has on us, whether it's through sociology, social psychology, anthropology, I think that we can develop more empathy with the experiences of others around us. And to me, that's the root of kindness, is understanding and empathizing with an experience that somebody else might be having that maybe you can help with.
Well, let's also now then turn to Elizabeth. Being the new director at Equality Ohio, what are you seeing? You're in there with both feet now. What is going on? And explain also what Equality Ohio does. Because some people might not be aware of that, but also some of the things that you're experiencing so soon in your tenure there.
Well, first of all, Equality Ohio is an educational and advocacy organization for LGBT rights in not only Columbus, but all across Ohio. And in terms of, if we really put it in terms of kindness, when I think about what we do and relate that to kindness, what we do is work to make everyone in Ohio feel at home. And that's probably the simplest and easiest way to encapsulate what we do. In terms of, I think the second part of that question was, I have both feet in it, and how are things going and what is it like? Well, I think that the best way to answer that is, again, from a standpoint of kindness and loving kindness. And interestingly enough, one of the reasons I came to Ohio, I've only been on the job a little bit over a month, and one of the reasons I came is because at the heart of most Ohioans is a heart of fairness. that people really care about fairness. And there are some of us in the community that don't have the same rights and don't have the same opportunities and don't have laws that reflect and protect all of us. And that's what Equality Ohio is about. That's why I'm here.
Great,
Wow.
great.
And back to kindness, thinking of the whole topic, you know, Joel, you had a really incredible experience with kindness and humanity over the past couple of weeks, and it's kind of gone viral. Would you like to tell our viewing audience about it?
Sure. So on December 31st, the early morning hours of December 31st.
My birthday, by the way.
Oh, yes, that's right.
No, yeah.
We're recurring theme here.
Birthday out later.
It's a Capricorn thing.
That's how it goes. That's how we do it.
Too funny. Well, on your birthday, early morning hours of your birthday, my friend Ethan and I were walking down High Street in the Short North, and we made a stop at a favorite pizza spot, the Late Night Slice Truck that's parked outside of Level. And we were standing outside. We walked up the line. It was a really cold night, if you remember. And so Ethan and I were holding hands, kind of shivering and huddling close together as cold as it was. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, we were laughing and joking about our night and how much fun we'd had that night so far. Out of nowhere, the gentleman in front of us turned around and said, "Hey, you guys need to cut that gay stuff out." And I mean, in a loud voice, and he kind of to us. And so I was a little shocked at his initial, reaction to us. And I thought, wow. And I asked him, I said, do you know where you're at? This is the Short North. This is a very open neighborhood, a community in Columbus. You're in Columbus. And then his response immediately was to continue to badger us and harass us for being gay, essentially. At that moment, it was really surprising because the individuals who were in the line around us actually chimed in and said, "Hey, this isn't okay." And they started telling him, you need to stop saying those things. This isn't okay for you to say in this environment. It's not okay for you to say at all. We're here, we're supportive. This is not an issue for us, anybody else in this line, so you need to stop saying these, stop with your rhetoric. He continued to go on, and a friend of mine, John Warner, was in front of him actually and happened to be there as well. And so they actually got into a heated discussion. He continued to say, fag and saying all these different, harassing words to us. And so, I got into a conversation, tried to engage him in a conversation. That didn't really go anywhere. He continued on his rant. Other people around us kept chiming in and telling him to just stop it and to let it go and that this wasn't okay. Well, all of a sudden, the guys in the pizza truck who were working that night actually chimed in and said, "Hey, you need to stop." And they called him his attention. They said, "This is not okay. We are a community that supports everyone, and this type of you spewing hate like this is not going to be okay at our establishment." And waiting in line for pizza, right? And so the guy continued on and said, "I'm not going to put up with this. Like, I don't have to put up with this." And so the gentleman in the pizza truck said, "Well, you know what? You're not getting any pizza, so you need to step out of line and leave because we're not going to serve people who are spewing this kind of hate rhetoric in our community." And so he had to leave. And so at that moment, it wasn't a situation where everybody clapped because he left. It was kind of like, it came to that. He got kicked out of line because he wasn't able to really watch what he was saying or, be tolerant of other people around him. But it was amazing because everybody rallied around us and as a sign of support, and all those people, we didn't ask them to chime in and stand up for us. Everybody kind of took the time to stand up for us. We didn't ask the pizza truck guy to kind of come out and help us out. He did that on his own, and it was pretty amazing to experience that kind of effect. And then, to walk away from that, immediately I started thinking about it. I thought, wow, it's a pretty incredible moment for me as an individual who's been actively involved in this community to witness that firsthand in that way. I've been to rallies, I've been, holding signs and standing up for gay rights for a while, but it was different when perfect strangers actually stood up for us and said those things and actually had our back in those situations. And so it was pretty incredible to experience. The next day, I woke up and I, started typing up a little post, and I kind of kept going back and forth to it. Ethan he's a friend of mine who was staying at my place, and so I had him read over it, and he said, "You're writing a novel." And I said, "No, I just want to get it all in there, I wanted to get as much of the story in there." So I posted it on Facebook, and it was pretty wild because we sat there and watched it, and as soon as I posted it, people started liking it. And within about 15 minutes, it had about 60 likes. And I joked with Ethan, and I said, "It's going to get about 100 likes for sure, it'll be fine. Like, people really will enjoy this." All of a sudden, out of nowhere, a couple of hours later, I'm out at Easton, and the thing is going, my phone is going off. All these notifications on Facebook, people are commenting, my phone just keeps buzzing, buzzing, buzzing. I thought, wow. So I'm sending Ethan text messages because he was, with some other friends, and I'm like, "It's at 300 now. It's at 400 now." I walk into Starbucks at Easton, and we're standing in line waiting to order our drinks, and all of a sudden I hear the baristas talking about the late night slice truck and what happened in the short run. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And at that moment, I should have known things were going to get crazy because I still just didn't have any idea of how far this was going to reach. At that point, it had about 500 likes on Facebook. And so we walked up, and my friend and I walked up, and we were talking to him, and he said, yeah, my professor at Capitol posted it, and I shared it. It's such a great story, you know. And I said, that was me. And he's like, really? Wow. And so I posted that on Facebook, and that immediately people started liking that. And I thought, wow, this is really going to go somewhere. I thought, it's already garnered so much attention. And, next thing you know, it just blew up out of nowhere. Mikey's, I emailed Mikey's, and I sent them a note and said, thank you. So, within the last 24 hours, this post has garnered so much attention. It has 2,000 likes, and it's just blown up and shared so many times. I want to thank you and the guys in the pizza truck for standing up for us and for being such a great steward of our community, and as a business especially, and so they responded back, and they actually posted their response on their Facebook page with my original posting. And that actually got picked up by Reddit, which is another social media tool that gets used a lot to share information. And that blew up. And so when I finally got to my attention, that Reddit post had about 130,000 views. And you can see how many people have viewed those posts. And so that was phenomenal to me. And I just thought, wow, this is just beyond anything I could ever imagine that this post would go. It's continued to go from there. So the next thing you know, I'm getting calls from the news stations. I'm getting calls from national media. The Huffington Post actually called me and said, would you consider writing a blog post about your experience? And I said, sure. And so I wrote it, and they posted it pretty quickly, turned it around and posted it right away. And that took off. And so that post actually was the true viral, I think, sensation, because it kept getting shared. It kept getting messaged. I kept getting emails about that whole article, and it was pretty phenomenal to hear people's stories and what came from that as well. So all the messages and emails that came in, I was having trouble keeping track. The comment sections were blowing up everywhere, and I thought there's no way I'm going to be able to manage all of these comments, but I did as much, I read as many of them as I could, because they were really amazing. And there were a lot of people who share their personal stories of courage, and when they acted with courage and when they didn't have the courage to stand up. And I think that point of reflection was pretty amazing for a lot of people.
Yeah, that was it. I think by the time I saw it, you were probably at 5,500 posts. And then I looked the next day, and it was at 8,500. And then it just blew up from there.
Yeah.
So I want to encourage our viewing audience to also feel free to call in if you'd like to say something with Joel or Deb or Elizabeth, or just tell us your story about a random act of kindness that you've either performed or received. Our number is 614-645-6557.
That's 645-6557. Make sure you make that call, because we would like to hear from you out in the community and things that are going on with you. I got to go back to Joel just real quick on this. So how you said that you couldn't see, look through all of them, but how did it make you feel? I mean, does this, are you like, wow, Columbus is the blessed place, or I can't believe this,
Just as good
yeah,
as I thought it
right. How does this make you feel about just humanity?
I felt so proud of Columbus, first and foremost, because the post first went viral in our city. And it was really funny because we joked about everybody in Columbus has seen this post, and after 24 hours, because it had been shared so many times and liked. And I thought that's pretty incredible, because we do live in an amazing city, a very open and smart city. And I think this is a testament to that specifically. And I felt really encouraged by the responses. By and large, they were 90% positive. There were some occasional ones that were just kind of like, well, he had every right to speak his mind. Those types of posts happen naturally as part of the conversation. But overall, they were extremely positive. And people were sharing their stories or their moments and saying, I used to live in Columbus. I don't live there anymore. This is amazing to hear, because it's not what I would have imagined for something in Ohio, or much less Columbus. But we live in a very progressive city, and so I think from myself, I was surprised that an incident like this happened, but it happened to me, I think. You never expect to experience something like that.
Yeah.
But once it happened, I realized, we lived in such an amazing city that this was the response my community had. And I absolutely overjoyed with pride in our city.
It's so good to know that good news travels fast as well as bad news. I mean,
Right.
we've had our share of bad news as a nation, and to have this great news be shared throughout the world is really wonderful. Something that was that I guess struck me as I felt a bit naive in doing a little background research for this particular show was I was on Equality Ohio's website, and it didn't really occur to me that that if you are in the LGBTQ community, you can be denied, service at a restaurant or at a hotel. And I thought, well, customer service should be customer service. I think, and tell me if I'm wrong, but I think that for the most part today, here in 2013, I think many, if not most, entities that are doing business they like the color of green more than they like any prejudice they may have. They're not prejudiced toward money, so they want it, and therefore will serve most people. But it did really strike me that in this day and age, you're still fighting for an equal right for humanity.
Exactly. It's a really good point that you're making. Many of us, even within our own community, don't realize that we don't share all of the same rights that the rest of Ohioans share. And I was saying to Joel when we first were talking that it's an unfortunate experience, at the same time a great experience that he had, but it made me very cognizant of not only all the work that we have to do, not just myself and not just Equality Ohio, but all of us, all of the work that we have to do to ensure that all Ohioans enjoy the same protections. And at the same time, exactly what you were talking about, because in Columbus, this is a great city to live in, and we have a little bit of a bubble going on, because what if my job transfers me to another part of the state where we do not have statewide protections? And the example that you use, particularly about green and about companies are very smart. Companies in Ohio want to attract and retain as much talent as they can. And employees, not just LGBT employees look at who's protected, who's not. Is this a state that I want to live in? And until we have protections that are statewide, and we are working on it right now, and we are working with businesses, and we're working with the legislature, and we are literally working on the EHEA, the Equal Housing and Employment Act, because it's time in Ohio. The people of Ohio are all about fairness, are all about dignity. And I mean, we just had an amazing example of bystander behavior that you don't see every day. Yeah. You just don't really see people stepping up in that way, but we did in Columbus. We got to see that. Mm-hmm. And but it's extremely important for us to remember that across the state, we do not all enjoy the same rights.
Go ahead.
Well, let me ask Deb real quick, because in sociology, right, what do you take from what has happened, with this particular example with Joel? What is your take on that?
Oh, gosh, there's a variety of ideas that come into play. We talked about bystander, the idea of bystander effect, which is the observation that in general, in groups, when there's a crowd present witnessing something wrong, there's a period of inactivity where most people stand off and don't do anything. And we see stories in the news all the time about somebody fell in the traffic and, cars went around them and people walked around them and they laid there for what seems like an eternity. But there's very specific situations in which the bystander effect is reduced, that inactivity is diminished. And one of those is when you empathize with the individual who's experiencing the victimization or the problem. When you are in very close proximity with that person and you can't really diffuse the responsibility. You can't say, oh, somebody else will call 911, right? So you're the one right there. You step up to the plate. And also when people are together in a cohesive group, they are more likely to act. But I think fundamentally our behaviors are set early on in life by norms that we learn in society. And we have norms in our society that encourage us to help and to act what we call pro-socially. And there are ways that we can trigger those norms, that we can, on a more regular basis, we can build empathy as individuals through learning stories, through learning what kind of things people don't have in terms of rights, through having relationships, through meeting individuals that, are, hey, he's a great guy, why would you be yelling at him, Through one-on-one relationships, we build empathy, and also we can, as a community, establish norms, like what we've been talking about here in Columbus, that in our place, in our home, we help each other. So establishing those pro-social norms, too.
I couldn't agree more. And the other question that I have for our viewing audience, call us at 614-645-6557. We'd like to know if you were in this situation and you saw Joel and you didn't know him and you were standing in line to get pizza, would you have stood up? Would you have said something? Would you have said something to the hecklers, or would you have simply been quiet? It's a question. It's actually a question that I asked myself, and I'm so excited to see the progression of time. When in the 70s and 80s, I think people would have been a lot more quiet. 90s, maybe they would have said a little more, but it's nice to know that we're finally at a point in this community, in this day and age, that people feel more, regardless of what you felt on the inside. I don't like conflict. And when I do meet conflict and I feel like I have to meet it, I really meet it. So I overshoot the target. So I'm not sure if I would have been the right one to be in line. But it's nice to know that because everybody was in line, like you were saying, that because people were in line, they felt more inclined to, we're together, we have this belief. Someone said it, and we're like, get out of line.
Yeah, there was a kind of a safety mechanism in place of, we're all in this together and we're all speaking up. And, it was interesting to Ethan, who was with me that night. He mentioned it in another interview. He said, it wasn't like everybody was yelling at him. These were people who were just like, hey, it's not okay. Like, just stop. And they were just a very casual, just stop what you're doing. Like, this isn't okay anymore. And it was interesting because it wasn't an attacking. It wasn't an attack mode. Even when my response to him, was just like, I'm going to have a conversation with you. We're waiting in line. Obviously, I'm not going anywhere because I want to get some pizza. But it actually was interesting how that dynamic played out in the end. So
I think a lot. I wonder how much your own personality plays into it because, I have the honor of knowing you personally, and you are just a cool, laid-back kind of dude. You're just the kind of person that, if there's a problem, you're the one to diffuse it and, make everybody feel good without making people feel ashamed.
yeah.
So I bet that has something to do with it.
Well, thank you.
Exactly. So let me ask this: Is this something through the posts and maybe some things that you guys have heard? Is this an anomaly here in Columbus, or have you heard of this happening to other persons as far as people getting involved and protecting that person who was being victimized? Do you hear that, or have you? You said that you had some positive posts of people telling their stories. Were they local to Columbus? And
I think a lot of the stories that I heard were people who were encouraged to stand up and to say, where I might have been silent before, this post has actually motivated me to take a stand. At times when I was silent because I was scared or because I wasn't sure how everyone else would react, and I think that's important too. I'm certain these things happen all the time. You look at Bravo's report, the Buckeye Regional Anti-Violence Organization, which tracks all of these kind of hate crime-based incidences in our city. I'm certain they happen all the time, and they happen all over our city, unfortunately. I don't think we hear the good stories enough, and I think that's where people really connected with the story, and they connected with the aspect that this was a community coming together, and it demonstrated that this does happen. And I think the national media picked up on it because it's Ohio. It's a bellwether state, and people seem to think that that we're all are apt to have a different type of response to a situation like this. But in our community, that wasn't the case. But I think overall, I definitely think that people are much more inclined to take that step forward now based on what they've seen and what they've heard. I think people emulate others' actions, and I think that's really helpful to know that it all worked out in the end, and there was a great story to tell afterwards. An unfortunate incident, as Elizabeth mentioned, but there was a great story to tell afterwards.
how do we keep this? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
But it also creates a teachable moment because, like you said, there were posts. I didn't see them all, but I know that there were posts, and we've had a lot of contact about people being very excited about this. It's as if it opens a window for people to see in themselves that they can do more in some very simple and very direct ways. And then the example that you gave, that as you did research, you realized, wait a minute, everybody in Ohio doesn't have the same rights. That we have some things to work on. And for me, that's encouraging because it is, again, that moment where you, certainly for the show, but also in knowing Joel, where you had an aha moment. And a lot of people are having that around our rights in the state and what it really means to be an Ohioan. Are we about exclusion or are we about inclusion? And when you talked about his conversational nature, when you sit and have a conversation with people, anyone, a person around the state, most Ohioans are about fairness. Most Ohioans are really about dignity. Most Ohioans are about inclusion.
That actually kind of touches on an idea that is very, very close to my heart, and something that kind of underlies all the teaching that I do, which is the idea through 40-odd years of studying social sciences, I have come to the absolute conclusion that we are much more alike than we are different. And even with this politically divisive year that we just had, you look at Hurricane Sandy comes in, and it wasn't about who's Democrat and who's Republican. It was, do you need help? Let me help you. We pull together, we care for each other, we help each other. And when we get the chance to have that little bit of insight into somebody's life, to see a personal thing happening to one person that we can connect with because we are more alike than others, than we're different, that has within it just a phenomenal potential. That's just the kernel of great potential there. But yeah, I agree that basically Ohioans are about fairness. No matter where they come in the spectrum on any particular belief,
Yes, it doesn't matter.
We have more in common than we have that divides us.
I got to touch on one thing because you're talking about, and this is one of my, I don't know, we say theories or what have you, but it seems as though that people need a common, I say a common enemy or common cause to bring them all together. We have a hurricane or whatever, common cause. Or we have a common enemy, whether it be war or whatever, common cause. We all come together. Why is that? Why is it, so when in Joel's instance, there's a common person who's the problem. We come together. So why do you see that?
This is a fundamental strength about humans, is our ability to form groups. And there are some theorists who believe that that's the one thing that has allowed people to be as successful as we are. Seriously, take a human, strip them naked, throw them out in the wild, and they're not going to survive long, right? We don't have fangs, we don't have teeth, we are not going to hold our own very well in nature as individuals.
I don't know. Can I take my iPad?
Our strength is in numbers, and we are, I believe, really hardwired to form groups, to ally ourselves with each other. But that is a process that's also, it's a psychological process, and we, over the course of our growing up and our experiences in life, we form group identities. We pick out certain people that we believe are like us or unlike us. And the people who are unlike us, we just seem to automatically have very negative feelings towards. Those when an outside experience like a war, like a hurricane, a natural disaster, when an outside experience reminds us of the we-ness, then automatic positive feelings come up. And so we can do this for ourselves individually, though, and continually focus on the we-ness, continually focus on the common humanity that we share, and kind of nurture that attitude of just compassion, just abiding compassion.
Let me ask you, I hate to ask a question I don't know the answer to, but I'm going to do it. But my feeling is, I'm not basing this on science, but my feeling is that that we-ness that is formed around positive experiences is stronger than, structurally stronger and longer lasting than around negative forces. Would that be true?
Gosh, I wouldn't know how to test that. I want to believe that.
I want to believe it. I want it said.
It's so hard to just say. Human beings are so complex. So to put everything or to judge something as being, oh, this is all good or oh, this is all bad. There's nothing in human experience that's really that black and white.
Ever.
Yes, ever. So in general, I do think it is dangerous sometimes. The things that unite us, the identities that bring us together, have the potential to divide us as well. So we always need to be conscious of that double-edged sword. But, you know, I fundamentally think that people are basically pro-social, we're basically altruistic, and that resonates very deeply within us. You know, when we draw together groups allied along lines of positive experiences, I think that's strong.
I am so glad for that question and your response to it. And it brings up the question for me, because I think about, Joel, you've got lots and lots of work to do with our, you know, you're the director of development. You've got a lot of money to raise to help a lot of good people get medical care. Deb, you've got a great task in front of you to educate people, and you've got 10 weeks to work with people and to infuse some thinking. And Elizabeth, though you just got back to Columbus and you're with Equality Ohio, you too have a vision, and you know that there's a big task ahead of you.
A lot of work to do here.
So, but I think that the situation and the act of kindness that Joel received, I think it brings about that conversation is, where can we take this conversation now that it's, you know, now that it's here and we have this opportunity, where can we take it? Where would you like to, how would you like to see it infused in each of your organizations and in the rest of our communities?
I'll start, yeah, sure. You know, I think for, you know, in my organization in particular, we rely on random acts of kindness every day, you know, and I sometimes feel like I get the best of both worlds, in the sense that I pick up the phone when a donor calls and tells me I'm making a gift in honor of so-and-so, or, you know, I'm making a gift because you helped my friend when they needed you the most, and it's been 10 years since they left this world. You know, those are moments that I feel like, you know, my random acts of kindness happen every day. So when you asked that, when we first started this conversation, I thought, wow, you know, it's the luxury of my job, which is amazing. At the same time, you know, I know my hard work going out into the community and helping to raise money and helping to make connections, help people understand what we do in our community is critical. And in terms of who we are and who we support, because we're working with a population that is underserved and that does not have access to the resources that you and I might have access to. And so I think for me, in particular, this entire story, all this movement, I think can be encapsulated in the sense that people can come together and they can be a voice. And I think that's what I walked away from all this. You always have to have a voice in every situation that you're in, and you have to be willing to advocate for those who are less fortunate than you or who need to be advocated for. And I think that was my big takeaway from all this, in particular. And in my organization, advocates, and those advocates come in a variety of forms. You know, they come in form of donors, they come in form of people who go to the State House and they petition for increased funding for people who are living with HIV and AIDS and for drug assistance programs. It comes in the form of individuals who are willing to go to events and support our programs and services. A variety of different forms that take place in that way. But I think it's important that you always have a voice and utilize that voice for positivity.
Excellent.
It's actually interesting that I listed off earlier a couple of factors that will reduce inactivity in that situation of the bystander effect. And one thing that I left out was that individuals, male, female, wherever they are, whatever age they are, when they feel confident, when they feel empowered, they are much more likely to do good in the world. You know, so I'm all about trying to help individuals learn, but through helping individuals, I see it as sort of a mission to affect a broader community. And I myself have, prior to teaching, I had a career in social work where we were working at community organization and helping on broad scales, trying to affect fundamental change. But it all comes down to the fact that it starts with you. It starts with one. You know, the first step is in here.
Exactly.
Thank you.
I think the list is long of the things that I would like to see happen for Equality Ohio in terms of and related to literally specifically this experience. And so I'm just going to make you have to have me come back, because that's at least a whole show, if not more. And I not only have a vision and a plan, we are working it. So I'm angling here. Happy birthday, happy birthday. But I think if I boil it down to 7 words, I would like everybody in Ohio to be able to say, this is our Ohio, and our equality. When everybody can say that, when we could say those 7 words, work me out of a job. I'm all about it, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But it is as simple as those 7 words.
So there you have it, people. Call her at 645-6557 and help Elizabeth work herself out of a job.
That's what I'm talking about. Wow, I'm glad I said that on TV. There's probably plenty of people be calling.
Let me help you.
Well, I guess it's interesting because when we were in the green room, Elizabeth, you were saying that, you know, at some point you had lived in India or you'd done some work in India.
Both.
And Joel, if I'm correct, you recently got back from India.
I did. We haven't had a chance to share stories.
We haven't really talked about it.
I know.
We will.
And I don't know if you have some stories.
I haven't been in India. No, I'm sorry.
But you have lots of good stories, and I'm looking forward to you continuing to share them. But I'm wondering, though, do you feel like you brought back some good karma with you? I mean, because it's kind of like you went to India, you came back, and I think you had a donor come and give you $100,000 one day, like after you got back, and then you had this happen. What do you make of it?
You know, I think the karma, I definitely brought back some good karma. I think anytime you can remove yourself from the day-to-day schedule that you live in and have a true moment of peace and relaxation. I was trekking in Napoleon, India, and so it was an incredible experience for myself. But yeah, I definitely think that kind of, you know, reconnecting or regrounding is always necessary in one's life, and I think that helped me out. And you know, the people in that part of the world are just so giving, and I think that was the one thing that I walked away with from that experience as well. Was just, you know, everybody's so generous here, you know, and in such a different, unique way in terms of experiences and a variety of different factors. And so I think I definitely brought some of that back. I'd like to think.
You had it all along. Maybe you just enhanced it or personified it.
That could be it.
What do you bring with you from all of you have so many world experiences throughout the U.S. and throughout the rest of the globe. What is it that you're bringing with you at this stage in your life that you think is going to be a special magic in your position and in your work?
Well, my first thing that comes to mind on that is that we all have special magic, and it's my realization of that I do nothing alone, that when we move forward as a state, when we move forward as a community, when we move forward together.
Yeah.
So it's realizing that yes, I am blessed in having the opportunities that I've had, and not that I haven't worked extremely hard, but that I've been able to. But at the same time, I didn't do anything alone. And in terms of Equality Ohio, and this, I really meant what I said about those 7 words. This really is our Ohio. This is our equality. And I mean it with a big capital O in front of those, as not just Ohio, but O-U-R. So I think that's there's no real special sauce alone ever. It's just that we all have magic. We can do this together, but it is something we do together.
Yes, and that we must do together.
Well, let me ask you this, though, because there are some people who don't want to be together. There are some people who says, you know, in regards to civil rights and the LGBT community, that it's not truly a civil rights issue. Mm-hmm. And I understand you were talking about the House bill and the Senate bills that we're trying to work on to get passed for housing, et cetera. What's your comment to that? What, you know, what is your response to someone like that? Well, it's you know, LGBT rights is not a civil rights issue. It's not a human rights issue. Well, what do you say to someone like that?
Depends on who the person is.
Okay.
and literally where they're coming from, because I really believe, I also have taught in university, and there is something to meeting people exactly where they are. But in general, the response is that you may not think, or in your mind, your head may not be around this as a civil right, but human dignity, how we live, the fact that at least 2 of us in this room cannot, you know, I can't leave things to a partner in terms of in a will. I can't, how I am affected if I choose to have children, and how I raise them, and how they are treated in schools. These are, you may not think of that as a civil right, but those are things that you enjoy every day, and rights that you have that a very large portion of the Ohio community does not have and does not enjoy. So if you need to take the word civil rights out of it, that's fine, but it really is about not only how we treat each other, but what those protections are. In our state, we are not all this or that or either or. We are blessedly diverse. And so our laws should reflect and protect every single one of us across the board.
I love the way you said that. You said we are blessedly diverse. I think it's the first time I've heard it said quite that way, but it just resonated, didn't it?
Yes,
Yeah.
it does.
We are blessedly diverse.
That is amazing. So, and that does, answer the question. I think that, I think we're fortunate here in Columbus, Ohio, because of diversity, and because we have leadership also with Mayor Coleman to embrace diversity. In some cities and states that they don't do that as proactively as he does. So I think we have to make sure we create that environment, to put our arms around diversity in all walks, in all spectrums, economically and socially and culturally, because we have a large, immigrant and refugee populations here in the city of Columbus who are working through a lot of different issues.
Some of the largest in the nation. In the 70s and 80s, we were the #2 largest Lao population. At one point, we were one of the largest, I think, second or third largest for Somali refugees.
Second,
Yes. So, and that's part because of our political leaders, and that's also just Columbus. There are a number of churches that are sponsoring refugees here from other countries, and we've got large universities that draw immigrants, but businesses. I mean, it's throughout our fiber. It's in our blood. I love that about this city. I'm not going to leave this city because I love the diversity here.
We need to have you on a commercial.
It's about community, but it also is that certainly our choice in terms of community, our choice of how to behave, but also our choice of leadership. Leadership matters. And I don't know that I should admit this, but I will. But I went to law school with Mayor Coleman, and I can say that historically. Wait, I better not say historically, because that makes he and I sound a little older than we want to be. But as long as I've known him, he's been not only inclusive, but very committed to enacting the kind of behaviors, both as a leader and in his personal life, that enact inclusiveness. I can't remember the phrase right now, but I think it's hand over hand. I mean, what a great, really, what a great way at looking at how we build things. It's together, right?
Yeah, it is together. So it sounds like the three of you have such heart and such passion for the work that you do and the way you lead your lives. What's underlying in there? Why do you do what you do?
I'll start again. I often wonder about that. I grew up the youngest of 7 of an immigrant family, and very poor. And I think for me, that's always been an underpinning of who I am as an individual, because it defined so much of who I was when I was growing up. And my parents instilled in me always that it wasn't about us, it was about the collective community. And so I think it was about the collective family and the collective unit that operated that way. And I think I just kind of extrapolated on that as I move forward in my life, because I found everywhere I go, that's what I try to build. I try to build a sense of community, a sense of being around people who are supportive and engaging, and I feel like I can achieve, we can achieve, in a sense, a better place than where we've been. And I think that was all ingrained in me as a kid. And even though my parents, they didn't go past, elementary school education, they valued that sense of community building from a very early age and instilled it in us. And I think I'm grateful to them for having been blessed with that type of an upbringing, and to now carry that forward. And I think that really is what has come to define me as an individual. So
that's great. And you definitely seem to embrace family. I think you've got 20 nieces and nephews?
Actually, yes, I do have 20 nieces and nephews.
Goodness gracious.
I've always been someone who is drawn to the underdog, and I think that goes to very, very early experiences that I had, where I was not so much bullied at school, but just outcast in a very young age. Before I was 8 years old, my family moved a lot, so we were often the odd ones out. And when I finally did get into a stable place where I, had several years under my belt with the same group of kids, I started seeing other people who were outcast, and I knew what that felt like. And so I made it my mission to whoever was the sort of, I don't know, scapegoat for the school year, I made it my mission to that became my special friend, and I put them under my wing and, you know, formed a social bond with that person. And it carried over into my life. It took me a little while to come back around to realizing that this is who I am. You know, I took some other side tracks first, but that early experience of being the odd one out gave me the empathy, not just for other people who are just exactly like me, but for anybody who is suffering anything. And, you know, I don't know, I kind of wonder about the people who feel like if I grant rights to somebody else, it somehow diminishes me. I've never felt that. I've always felt that we're all, anybody who is suffering, we can lift all of us up, you know? So, yeah, it goes back to those early experiences again.
Exactly.
Thank you.
I think for me, it's a question always comes to mind when somebody asks that to me, and it's, how can I not? How can I not put all of my energy, all of my passion, all of my intellect, all of my spirituality into this kind of work? Because it's there, there's injustice there, and I am about social justice, right? So how can I not focus myself and stay focused and be a part of doing this work every single day with every breath I take?
Wow.
And it must be so refreshing, though, to be in a job that I hear passion throughout. You know, it's just like, this is me, and this exudes who I am, you know, and so how do you keep that up? Because I know in each position, you know, to keep that power and that passion going, don't you just come to a day where, like, you know what, I have fought every battle, you know, I keep getting kicked in the teeth, you know, why do I keep doing this? This issue is bigger than I am, you know, or what I'm doing is bigger than I am, why keep going? What keeps you going?
Yeah, you know, for me in my job, you know, our president and CEO will ask us, how many lives have you saved today? And I remember the first time I heard that statement, I thought, wow, this is where I work. This is what we do. You know, we are saving lives. People who don't have access to the care that they need die of AIDS. You know, that still is a thing that happens, and people in the community don't understand or believe that. But it is the fact of the matter for us. And so I think that is a motivation for me, is that, you know, by and large, I would be doing what I'm doing if people didn't die. But because people do die, and that this is a matter of life and death for so many people, it's important. It makes it all that more important to me in the work that I do on a day-to-day basis. So I think, you know, you may have a bad day, but at the end of the day, I think I've helped so many people today, and that's helped me, you know, get through this day in the end, and I feel much more better about what I've accomplished today. Even though it may not seem like much, it's made a difference in someone else's life, and it's wonderful to have that kind of, to be able to walk away from the office and think that as you're walking away, and not be, you know, so down and out on yourself or as frustrated as you might get, because at the end of the day, you are making an impact, and it's pretty special.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I think you have to learn how to sort of reset your focus, recalibrate your meters, and be able to see the good that's there. Because there's nothing, as I said before, there's nothing that's either good or bad. Sometimes you have to look for the real small little kernel of hope. I learned this in my social work career, that, you know, sometimes the kernel of hope is really, really small, but it's there. And looking for that helps. So I've had wonderful experiences, which even now, this is 20 years later, and I'm still getting goosebumps. You know, I had a young man one time who I was pumping gas, and he came running across the street at me, hey, screaming, hey, coming running across the street. And everybody in the gas station is kind of looking like, what's going on, what's this? And he's looking straight at me, and he's running right up to me, and he finally says, hey, you don't recognize me, but you were my counselor once. And he told me the story, and I began to remember. He came in, I worked at a place that used to do sort of walk-in crisis counseling for youth, and he happened across my way at one point. And it was my job to sort of meet him and offer services, and in that conversation, I tried to be open and honest with him. I tried to let him know that I don't have the same experience as he does, and you know, that I welcomed him teaching me what it was like to be him. I tried to be empathetic, but I also told him the truth when I thought he was making mistakes, you know, and he didn't want to hear that, so he told me where to go and ran away, right? All of 15 minutes in my counseling session. And here, 5 years later, he's running across the street, and he says, I wanted you to know that even though I told you to screw yourself, what you said stuck with me, and it made a difference, and I want you to know I'm okay now. And you know, that was an absolute gift of Providence, that I had that opportunity to cross paths with that man 5 years later. Because anybody who stopped at the moment where he said and ran away would think it was a failure.
Exactly.
By just trying to be true, by just trying to be empathetic, the seed was planted. And we never get to see it grow often in our line of work. But you have to have the ability to sort of switch your eyes and to see those little, to see the seeds that are planted, and to know that they are growing somewhere. And maybe you get the gift of being able to see the fruit.
Wow.
5 years later.
I think you asked, how do I keep the passion and the fire alive, right? And love, with a great deal of love. And for me, that can be sometimes very recognizing and being aware of the very random acts that happen in my daily life, where people are, for absolutely no other reason than they are alive and I happen to be breathing, that they're kind to me. And it reminds me that there is love in the world. I also was raised in an extremely loving family. And it is part of the motivation for the work that I do, because if I have the experience of being able to enjoy such comfort and such care and such loving kindness every day in my life, and my parents are both gone, but my siblings are, and my nieces and nephews are people that I turn to all the time, just because there's love there, right? Mm-hmm. And so whether it's literally from the kindness, the random acts from strangers, or from the very specific, heartfelt, and very solid foundation of my family, and somewhere in between. Sometimes it's just something, you know, I'll look up and something really kind that somebody that's working with me does, and I think that's love. That's how I stay fired up, with love.
Exactly. And speaking of love, I think we have a caller on the line. Caller, are you there with your question or your comment?
Yes, maybe both. It's a good discussion tonight. I want to say that I'm one of your regular. One of the question I have, which kind of goes against the opposite of active kindness, in some media exploiting, and I can name a lot of things, in the name of entertainment, that exploiting. I mean, I can name a few shows too, like Honey Boo Boos or Housewives. You see the most vicious, loudest mouth, the meanest person get the most attention, and that's what this is not good for our culture, I feel, and it's damaging, I believe, and it does the opposite. You have to be mean, like evil almost, to win and beat the other person and make money or be famous, and I can name endless. I mean, another example is somebody like Snooki's making $50,000 to lecturing kids at college. She has zero accomplishment, and I think these kind of things goes against the act of kindness, I believe, and I didn't think they dictate good things for our culture. Basically, that's my question.
I mean, thank you, caller, for that question and comment. I mean, that does bring to a point, because I'm thinking the same thing when we talk about positive things, getting positive things out there in the community, and we talked about well, how do we continue that conversation or keep it out there in the public eye, because I think it's contagious. Mm-hmm. When you see somebody doing a great thing, you hear about somebody doing it, it's like, okay, I need to do that. Mm-hmm. I want to get involved in that. So, and we have some media out there that it seems like all you see is the negative. Or, when it comes to some, if it bleeds, it leads. That type of attitude, when we want to be able to say, we want the positive things out there, because when we see that, it's infectious, and it keeps it going. So, and it gives you hope that you can make a difference out there. So, to the caller's point, how do we make that happen? How do we raise up and lift up the random acts of kindness and keeping things positive and kind of pushing down, saying We don't like what you got to deal with. We don't want to see the negative. We don't want to see some of the reality shows that are, all infighting and showing the worst of us.
We want to see the best of us.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And that's where I think, as you said, if it bleeds, it leads. Aggression is an easy thing to translate to many audiences. It makes money. A lot of people can register or relate to that. But we need to be able, as individuals, recognizing, okay, if the media business is going to be doing negative things, then we can do it on our own by sharing through social media and other things that are available to us the positive messages, by word of mouth advertising, even in this day of multimedia advertising, even with social media. Word of mouth is still the most influential way to shape somebody's buying behavior. We have much more influence over the people that are in our immediate environment than any other thing that they're facing. So, each of these little acts of kindness that we do at a pizza truck near, in the short north, those kind of things, although they're few and far between, have much greater power to influence the folks in our immediate presence than, I believe, the shows like Honey Boo Boo and so forth, the negative kind of things that are out there. Well, yeah, it's out there, but I think we can outdo it.
And I think if we encapsulate some of those ideas, the way you combat, and I am using, I realize that's a violent word there, but the way that you combat that culturally is with truth and with transparency. Because are those real TV shows, real this, real that? Are they really real? Mm-hmm. Right. No. Mm-hmm. No. And when we have transparency in our daily lives with the people that we know, and when we lead with truth, there is not a question. That is positive. That is undeniable. That's what you walk forward with. And you walk forward together. Together.
Exactly. And the truth is that, and so you're so true, and we could have this conversation for the next hour. I know it. And so we might have, we will have to bring it back. We will have to.
We need to come out and actually spend a day with you at Equality Ohio
Exactly.
and film what you do so that we can bring that back.
Well, we've got about 30 seconds though. If they need to get a hold of you, Joel, how do they get a hold of you?
You can look me up on Facebook, so that's probably the easiest way to reach me. Obviously, millions of people I feel have seen my Facebook page. So Joel Diaz, look me up on Facebook, or you can email me at joeldiaz@gmail.com. So.
Excellent.
D. Supelak, SUPELAK, at cscc.edu, Columbus State Community College.
All right.
Elizabeth at Equality Ohio, but my first name is spelled a little differently. It's ELYZABETH, and if that is just throwing you, then you just go to www.equalityohio.org.
Excellent. We appreciate all of your work that you're doing and continue that work, and we love to see the passion. And we're going to figure out a way that we can have all these random acts of kindness here in Columbus, here in the city, put somewhere where it can be viewed. And speaking, so thanks so much. I'm speaking of random acts of kindness. We're celebrating Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday coming up the 21st. We want to make sure that you're a part of that. All the viewing audience, we got to come down for the march at City Hall. We're celebrating his birthday Monday, January 21st. We start at 4 p.m. as far as the get-together down at City Hall. We step off at 4:45 and we march over to Veterans Memorial, where there's a great program, free program that opens at 5:30. We start the program and it goes till about 7 o'clock, but it's a great program, and make sure you go to our website at www.crc.columbus.gov to check that out.
Hot chocolate and hot dogs. It's
yeah,
free.
if it's cold out, it's going to be warm inside.
And it
also,
won't be cold. The weather's been good lately.
It has. So it's going to be 70 degrees and sunny, so you'll be able to wear your shorts. Also, in April, the Civil Rights Tour. We have a great tour that we do every year out of our office, the Civil Rights Tour. It's April 2nd through the 6th. Make sure you get registered for that, because we are actually.
Bus is filling up.
It is. We're almost full, but you got to call or go to our website at crc.columbus.gov. April 2nd through the 6th. Great tour. I can name wherever we go, but it's too many days. But give us a call at 645-1993. So once again, thank you for being here. Thank you for being a part of our program. Have a great week and take care.